what's going on in the West Asia, basically the conflict between Iran and the United States, and what has happened in the last 24 and 48 hours, which is important. And the most important thing that has happened is the new military pact between Pakistan, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia, or Turkey and Saudi Arabia. This is so important. Many are talking about and downplaying the importance of what has happened. I think it's so significant what has happened, because after all, you see some sort of understanding in the region starting to grow. What does that mean? It means that so far with the war in the West Asia, the countries are getting to the point, basically GCC countries, and the most important one is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, considering all these GCC countries, or Sunni Muslim, is the heart of that concept. If Saudi Arabia decides to do something, it means the other country is going to go after him. In my opinion, it's going to be about Qatar. It's going to be about UAE. It's so somehow different. They try to confront Saudi Arabia in many areas, in Sudan, in Yemen, in Somalia. They're trying to confront the Saudi Arabia and its policies. But after all, the Sunni Muslim is mostly influenced by Saudi Arabia and the policies in Saudi Arabia. Let me bring the map here to understand the importance of what has happened. Here you see the map of the region, this, as we call it, the West Asia. And here you see Pakistan, here, together with Saudi Arabia, here, and Turkey, coming together. And these three countries are so important when it comes to the region. You see the region, how the region is trying to redefine itself. Let me just show something else here. All of these three countries came together not in Riyadh, which is the capital of Saudi Arabia. It was somewhere here. What does that mean? It was in Mecca. Mecca is the most important city, I would say, for the Muslims, because all of these Muslim people, at least once in their lifetime, they go there in Mecca. And that's the importance of that. That shows the importance for all the Muslim people all around the world. And when they decide to go from Riyadh to Mecca, it means something. It means all about the Muslim people. And there's some sort of understanding that who's the target of this pact, military pact? Is that Yemen here? Because Yemen recently, as you know, started attacking Saudi Arabia in this region. Jazan refinery was attacked by Yemeni, by Houthis in Yemen, and something like 400,000 barrels a day were somehow disappeared from the exports of Saudi Arabia. So they have influence, at least temporarily. They're not going to be able to send these 400,000 barrels per day. The other important point, the targets were here in Jazan, and the other part was here. Let me just, in this region, here, close to Bahrain. It's so little here. You see, this little point here is Bahrain, and close to Bahrain, you see the other Abqaiq refinery is there, that it was targeted. So Yemen targeted 2 points. One is close to Yemen, and the other one close to Bahrain. These are two important, it's the part of the Aramco, sort of oil refineries, of the oil facilities of Saudi Arabia. This is so significant when it comes to the export of oil, because Saudi Arabia, during the war between the United States and Iran and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz here, Saudi Arabia was able to use the Red Sea to get out of the problem. And the problem was here. And they were using the Red Sea in a Bab al-Mandab, here down below, here in this direction. They were using coming and they're exporting their oil. Right now, the only solution for them is using the Suez Canal, which is the Suez Canal is here. You see, they have to come here and then come into the Mediterranean Sea. They have to go to the Suez Canal. And it has its own limitations. It's so difficult to get many barrels out of the Red Sea and using the Suez Canal. This is the difficulties that they're facing, and coming up, then coming together with the attacks here and the attacks in Abqaiq and Jazan all together, it shows how impactful the attacks, Yemeni attack on Saudi Arabia was so far. So the main point with this new military pact was: are they going to go against Yemen? Are they going to get prepared? Is Pakistan going to attack or help Saudi Arabia attacking Yemen? Is it going to come from Turkey, all of them together? My understanding is that there is nothing of that sort happening, or they're not going to happen, because last night we had a new attack again in this area, Yemeni attack in this area, and you see no response from this new military pact. So what is that? What is that understanding that is shaping? Two important points. Pakistan here and Turkey here, they're both neighbors of Iran. One in the northwest and the other one in the southeast of Iran. And these two countries, while neighboring Iran, they know the importance of the region and the security of the region. We were talking since the war started, Iran started attacking, and the Iranians started attacking all these bases from Iraq to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, coming to UAE and Oman. Even Oman was targeted. So the whole region was somehow under Iranian attacks, Iranian missiles and drones. So many people were asking, so what would be the next step? I think the next step is happening as we talk. It's not about Iran starting this. It's about part of what Iran is doing. These two are parallel movements in the region. When you see Saudi Arabia, after all, after many years trying to understand that, they thought that the US bases in their countries, in Saudi Arabia, here in Iraq, and all these countries, they thought that these bases going to help them if something happens, for example, Iran. And it did happen. And what was the response? Did the United States help them? It didn't happen. So they have to find some sort of alternative. What would be that alternative? Is that going to be confrontation as it's happening right now? Because Saudi Arabia, before this military or defense pact with Pakistan and Turkey, they did simply nothing. They were so silent during the war. They had some sort of communications with Iranian, telling them behind the scene, we're not part of this. We don't want to be part of this. This war is not going to benefit us. So we're not going to do anything against you. But on the other hand, we know that the United States used all of these territories, all in the western part of Iran and close to the Persian Gulf. All these areas were used in the attacks on Iran. So when they started attacking Yemen, Saudi Arabia, you remember that Saudi Arabia started attacking Yemen because there was an Iranian airplane going to Sana'a here. And basically those Yemenis came for the funeral of the late supreme leader of Iran. They went to Iran to the funeral. Some of them were ill or they had problems. And they went there, after, being there for 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken, with 2 or 3 weeks, they were there in Iran, and they got back. On their way back, when the Iranian airplane tried to land here in Sana'a International Airport, you see Saudi Arabia, their fighter jets coming here and hitting the runway of the Sana'a International Airport here. So the whole conflict started with the Saudi attack on Yemen. Then Yemen started attacking Saudi Arabia. This is the conflict that is, it was they thought that they didn't want to lose the siege on Yemen, and it was all started. It started long before what we are talking about. 12 years. For 12 years, Saudi Arabia, together with the UAE and the United States, they attacked Yemen. They have their proxies in Yemen. UAE and Saudi Arabia, they had their proxies in Yemen together with the United States, CIA, all these agents, I would say Mossad, they tried to make some sort of division in Yemen, some sort of civil war. This is part of the strategy. Whenever it comes to Lebanon, for example, you have some sort of division in Lebanon right now. The same way. This is the policy, making the civil war, dividing the country, and they're paying some part of the country to attack the other part as we today is happening as I talk. Yemenis are fighting each other. The pro Saudi Yemenis are who are paid by Saudi Arabia, and they're trying to fight Houthis, and the Houthis are these guys are so tough, and they're not going to back down. They didn't back down during the U.S. attacks. Together, all of these, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and the United States, they tried to force them into some sort of capitulation, but they couldn't do it. And you remember in 2025, the United States under the Trump administration, again, after the failed attempt on the part of the Joe Biden and his administration, they said this time around going to be different. So in 2025, they came here to the Red Sea with the aircraft carriers. They tried to force Yemenis. It didn't work. So how can you imagine if the United States, together with Saudi Arabia and UAE, they couldn't do this? And the power that the United States has in the sea. And how can you imagine Pakistan and Turkey somehow believing that they're going to force Yemenis into capitulation? This wasn't the plan. The plan is how to resolve the issue, first of all, for Saudi Arabia. Turkey, together with Pakistan, are coming together to bring some sort of dialogue in the region. The dialogue is happening as we talk. That's why you see they forced the government or the resistance in Iraq. They talk with them. They talk with Iranians. And because they don't want new attacks on Saudi Arabia. It was all about Iraq. It wasn't about Yemen. Because the Iraq issue was later on, as you remember, the United States together with Saudi Arabia, they attacked Iraq. They set a port. They attacked PMF, Popular Mobilization Forces, which is part of the Iraqi army. They said that the latest drone attacks, were done by the resistance in Iraq, which was rejected by these forces in Iraq. But they didn't pay attention. They said that they ignored that and they attacked Iraq. So this is the chaos that was created, and Saudi Arabia somehow finds itself in the middle of a chaos that is expanding. They cannot handle that. They cannot survive that. That's why you see Turkey and Pakistan are trying to help them politically, not militarily, I would say. This military pact doesn't have anything to do with any sort of attack on Yemen. They're not going to do it. And even with the case of Iran, let's assume they're coming together to respond to Iranian attack. It's impossible. There is no way to have any sort of military conflict between Turkey and Iran. This is well understood in Tehran and in Ankara. These two countries never fight each other. And Pakistan the same way. They have some issue. Iran has some issues here in this state, Sistan and Baluchistan. These are Baluchi people who are mostly infiltrated by CIA and the foreign agents. And usually when they do some sort of manipulation, they come to this region, pay the people, and do, the chaos. They're trying to make chaos inside Iran. And it's right close to the Pakistani border here. And you see somehow in the recent years, if you pay attention, you see Iranian attack in some areas here inside Pakistan even, with missiles and drones, basically with drones. And because these groups, these as they call it, terrorist groups. They're trying to, to 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 influence the security of the region here, and maybe doing some, some sort of sabotaging, the railways, or bombing some areas, civilian infrastructure, something of this sort. But we have the conflict here at this border between Iran and Pakistan. But the two countries, again, they totally understand. Pakistan is not supporting them, Iran is not supporting them. Then they try to put pressure on these people here to control them, to keep them under the control. And the other point is, as we learned during the war, was this area here in the northern part of Iraq, here, Iran, and then going to Turkey. This area is occupied by the Kurdish people, and this area as well. These are the most important proxies to be used, or ground forces to be used against Iran. And this area here, you have three provinces: Elam, Kermanshah, and Kurdistan. And going above that, you see the Azerbaijan, the western and eastern Azerbaijan. You have the Kurdish people in that area as well. So the combination, let me just mention again, this is the Baluchi people here, close to the border with Pakistan. The problem right now for the Iranian government, you don't see, since the war started, we haven't seen any sort of serious attack in this area or a special operation in this area. It means that they have them under the control. They're not that much concerned about this area. The main focus was here in this area since the war started. And the other point was this state here, the state of Khuzestan. As you remember, in the last 2 weeks, the United States was using the HIMARS to attack this province. And Ahvaz was multiple times was under attack. They hit multiple areas in this city and the other cities as well within this province. And the combination of people here in this area, they're Iranian Arabs, and we have multiple ethnicities in that area. But basically, we have Iranian Arabs and the other Iranian, we have Lors and Bakhtiaris and, the other cities, Behbahani, Desfuli, all these ethnicities are living in this area. They all feeling the same, by the way. We call them, whoever knows Iran knows what I'm talking about. But after all, the problem for the United States, the problem for Israel, I would say, not the United States, is that this area, which used to be useful for them to be manipulated, they're not there anymore. Why? Because of what has happened here in Palestine and in Israel. In the last 4 years, because of what these Iranian Arabs here, they're so much connected. They're Shia Muslim. You know that the majority of Iranians are Shia Muslim. The majority all around Iran is Shia Muslim. And these people, they're so much connected with the culture in Iraq. And then we know the connection between Iraq and Kuwait. Kuwait was part of Iraq. It wasn't a long time ago that Kuwait was part of Iraq and was separated from Iraq. And then you see the cultural connection between these areas here. When you see what has happened in Gaza, which in my opinion is so important to understand, the whole region has been redefined by the war in Gaza. It means that all these people, the Iranian Arabs, Iraqis, and Shia Muslim being more unified because of what has happened in Palestine, because they saw that the only countries that are supporting Palestine are Yemen and Iran together, and then from Lebanon here. So you see Lebanon, let me just bring it up here. You see three important areas: Lebanon, Iran, and Yemen together with Iraqi resistance, together with Iraq supporting Palestinian people. This is the main reason. This is unifying the whole, the whole region. It means that there is no way to manipulate the state of Khuzestan anymore. It was manipulated during the Iran-Iraq war. There were some Arab Iranians here in this area helping Iraqi, army, or trying to betray Iranians. There were not that much, but it was important in those days. That's not the case anymore. So they don't have what is happening right now. The Arab Iranians, they're not part of the game anymore. Baluchis under the control, and the Kurdish people here are somehow isolated. They're not going to be connected that much. If something happens in this area here, which is large part in Turkey, it means the Kurdish people coming together, they may use these people here as well. When I'm talking about the region, I'm not talking about the majority of the people. I'm talking about those groups that can be used against, the Iranian government here. So what has happened? The problem for us, for many of us who may believe that maybe Turkey is going to help Saudi Arabia, that's not going to happen. That's why you see when the United States decided to use these Kurdish people here to attack Iran, to invade Iran, to do some sort of incursion, Turkey said no, because this huge area here is you see the Kurdish people in this area. If something happens here, it means that it goes to Turkey as well. Then the security of Turkey would be under some sort of problems. They don't want any sort of chaos in this region. This is the complexity of what's going on. And Pakistan doesn't want any sort of chaos here as well. So they have common interests in Turkey and in Iran, despite all those cultural ties, all those ancient relationship between the two nations. Even with Iran and Pakistan, you see huge, deep connections between the Pakistani people and Iranian people. Just to mention that, you have to understand the anthem, the national anthem of Pakistan is in Persian. It is not in Urdu. That's why you have to understand that how these countries are connected traditionally, culturally, and it goes many years, for thousands of years. This connection comes. That's why I see no problem on the part of Iran. You see yesterday the Iranian foreign minister coming out and saying all these moves on the part of Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, we're going to welcome that. We don't have any sort of problem. It was totally positive, the reaction from Tehran. You see some people are in Iran, some people who are in the parliament who would react, but I'm talking about the official policy of Tehran. It means that they understand whatever is happening in the region that unifies the region is so important. The other point was what was said by the Pakistani defense minister yesterday. He said that the problem is that we are trying to bring all these Muslim countries together. And they see the problem here, Israel. The problem, all this, just imagine what is happening. Why is the whole war, the concept of war in this region, when you go years and years, back, and you want to understand, there was some sort of division between Shia and Sunni. I would argue it was all created by the policies in the British Empire, because this region wasn't like this. Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and Iraq and Qatar and all these separated. It was all defined by the British Empire. Part of the agenda was how to control the region. And the region is growing because of its importance. because we know that right now with the Strait of Hormuz, at least we know 20% of the oil, gas, helium, name it. Many things are getting out of this Strait of Hormuz. That is the importance of the strait. So if you control, instead of controlling, you know, the 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 region the way that it was before, you have a unified sort of territory which would be significant in terms of the army, in terms of the land, in terms of the economy. It's going to be a huge country with a huge economy. The army would be more powerful. They divided they divided the area into a little countries, and you don't see a significant army in Saudi Arabia, in Jordan, or Iraq was under Saddam Hussein was powerful when he received the support from the United States, from Europeans. For 8 years they were fighting Iranians for 8 years. So they had a significant army supported by the West, by the military machine of the West, and attacking Iran. Iran was, in those days of the attacks, Iran was right. It was right after the revolution in 1980s in Iran. Iran was in the most fragile situation in those days because it was the regime of Shah was removed, and you see the Islamic Republic coming to power and trying to redefine everything inside the country. It was so difficult, by the way. They had to fight again in the initial days. These areas were critical, even in the initial days of the revolution in Iran, because these people wanted to separate themselves from Iran. Not only the Kurdish people, we have the Turks here as well, a combination of Turk and Kurds. So after the separation of Azerbaijan was somehow, we're going to join. We're going to join. We're going to make a new state called Azerbaijan here. So it was all about separating, making some sort of chaos. This chunk goes to the Kurdish people. This part goes to the Azeri people. And here the plan was to separate Iraq, attack Iran, because they wanted to invade this part of Iran, which was Khuzestan. Khuzestan is the most important province in Iran, considering the production of oil. So it means more than, I would say, 80% of the Iranian oil comes from this area. So if Iraq could have captured this area and separated with the population there, Iranian Arabs coming back to, they're talking about, the Iraqi government was talking about, they're going to come back home. It wasn't part of Iran. It's going to be part of us. So you see all of that happening in the initial days of the revolution in Iran, 1980s. So then you see, after Iran-Iraq war, Iran redefining itself, reproducing itself by changing the ideology, by changing their military strategy. Because during the Iran, under the Shah in Iran before 1980s, the Iranian power was basically mostly coming from the fighter jets and the ground troops in Iran, together with the fighter air force of Iran. Iran had a little navy as well. It's just insignificant somehow. But the Air Force, which was so connected with the United States and the Air Force of the United States, and they were so powerful, they were controlling the area, the whole area. But after the revolution, what has happened? During the Iran-Iraq war, they saw how these fighter jets are not capable to fight a war on the ground. They can go and bomb some cities, some areas, but that doesn't mean that much when it comes to, to the territories and to the ground forces. If Iraq tries to do something, and it was so difficult for them, they didn't have missiles, so they have decided during those days to produce missiles, and later on they have learned how to produce, drones. So the whole strategy of Iran, even the navy, Iran is not Iran doesn't have a navy as big as the United States. The United States is gigantic when it comes to the navy, but they have created, as they call it, mosquito fleet. The mosquito sort of, they have these little boats, speedboats, that are so capable of controlling, because the Iranian strategy was always defending itself, not attacking any countries, even here in the Persian Gulf. So here, Bahrain, this little point here is Bahrain. Bahrain was part of Iran during the Shah, and Shah of Iran, they have decided, to give it up. They gave it up. They decided to, you know let Bahrain goes without Iran. They said it's going to be, you know it's going to be different, because there were a lot of pressure from outside, from the United States, from other uh, countries, and finally the government, the Shah in Iran, has decided to let Bahrain go. And to this day, you don't see any sort of Iran. Iran is not talking about Bahrain anymore. But if the war continues, that could change the whole region, in my opinion. Kuwait is not that powerful. It's possible to Iraq doing something in Kuwait, or Iran coming to Bahrain. They have been doing some operations here in the northern part of Iraq, because the northern part of Iraq here is not totally under the control of the Iraqi government. There is some sort of communication with the Iraqi government, but they're controlled by themselves. Like a state in the United States, even more, they have more power here in this region, the Kurdish people. So Iran has to resolve its issue with the Kurdish people directly, talking with them, communicating with them, instead of using the Iraqi government, because they don't have that much of leverage here in this region. This is the difficulties that these are the difficulties that were created for Iran for such a long time. So coming back to what is going on right now, in my opinion, is it going to be difficult to bring all these countries together? Is it going to happen? Maybe in the next step would be Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, all coming together to this pact, defense pact. And the question was asked by, the Turkish reporter yesterday. They asked the Turkish foreign minister, is how about Iran? What is your understanding of Iran and this military pact that you have with Saudi Arabia and Pakistan? He said, when Iran resolves its own problems in the region, when it comes to contributing to constructive regional policies and entering a collective arena, their role is needed. This is Fidan, the Turkish foreign minister. We always say this. The Iranians are not unfamiliar with this issue.